Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I am the food enthusiast here at J Moore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Well, maybe not frustrated this week, but we'll get back to that. Those of you joining us live, drop your questions into the comment box and I will check from time to time. You'll see my head sort of turn to the side. I want to welcome our sponsor, the Pearlstone Center. Pearlstone offers environmentally friendly full-service hospitality. Their beautiful facilities and natural surroundings create the optimal setting for memorable events and group gatherings. It was just about 10 years ago that Molly Gilbert's first cookbook, Sheet Pan Suppers, with its unique concept, took the home cooking world by storm. Her second book, One Pan and Done, followed the same concept of simplified cooking. Now she returns to her professionally trained pastry roots with sheet pan sweets, simple, streamlined dessert, and recipes. The book hits the market October 4th. Molly is the founder of a very famous food blog called Dunk and Crumble. She even had a podcast prior to. As a graduate of the French Culinary Institute, now part of the Institute of Culinary Education, she has had roles as a cooking instructor, private chef, and recipe tester in the magazine Kitchen Savoir or Savoir. She'll tell me the proper pronunciation. There's always been a question about that. Let's welcome Molly.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Good afternoon, Molly. What's on your plate today, or should I say sheet pan?
I'm just really excited to be here talking to you. And it's morning here. I'm in Seattle, where I'm based, so I just had breakfast.
Okay. Question for you. Savoir, savoir?
I say saveur.
Savoir, third option. Great. Savoir. Okay, everyone, that's been answered. Molly, you started on a career path, a different career path. What was it and why the change?
Yeah, so I graduated from Amherst College and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, with a liberal arts education. Could
Right.
kind of go in a lot of different directions, but I kind of followed in the footsteps of my parents, who are both in the healthcare field, and I decided to join a healthcare consultancy, which I thought sounded interesting and like a very grown up sort of job. And I did that for almost 3 years, and pretty much didn't love most of it. It's super interesting, just not for me. And I would come home from a long day at work and get in the kitchen and just start playing around and testing recipes. And that's when I started my food blog. So food was sort of a creative outlet for me at the time. And eventually I just sort of decided, you know what, why couldn't this be my job? So I quit and enrolled in culinary school, and it sort of all took off from there.
Okay. I'm just seeing some things changed technically on the show, but that's great. That's great. Well, it's a long story, but was there an inspiration at home prior to? Was your grandmother, your mother, somebody into baking versus the cooking? Why more to the pastry side?
So my Aunt Maggie, who lives in Minneapolis, worked for years for General Mills and for Pillsbury. So she was in the test kitchen there doing all sorts of creations, coming up with new products and helping with the photo shoots and stuff for them. And so
Really?
she would come to visit. Usually around the holidays, we would always bake cookies together. So I have these memories of decorating sugar cookies with her and baking pies for Thanksgiving. And she was sort of my main baking inspiration, I would say. Though my mom, my other aunts, and my grandmas are good in the kitchen as well. So I grew up loving food and being around a lot of food, but didn't really start cooking myself until after college.
Well, um, baking to me, as I said earlier, is a challenge.
Yeah.
Baking is very specific. It's a science. And I do it to challenge myself, but sometimes I want to pull the hair out of my head. But
I totally understand that. I think a lot of people feel the same way.
sheet pan sweets. And you had a recipe in here. Let's see. Olive oil, orange scented challah. And I went, okay, she's only using 3 braids. I think I can do this.
Yep. I feel like the braid is a big barrier to people making challah a lot of times because nobody wants to sit there, kind of messing with 9 strands of dough. It's very intimidating to me, even to me. And I do this for a living. So when I developed the recipe, I decided to keep it as simple as possible, go with just a regular 3-strand braid. And you kind of form it into a round shape. And yeah, you made it, you said, and it turned out well.
Yeah, it's on Instagram. I mean, I gave some to my neighbor. I had another friend come over for some. I have a friend in from out of town.
Perfect.
And, we're still eating the same loaf of challah.
It makes
and it
great
came
toast.
out perfect, just perfect, everybody. So that's why I'm not a frustrated baker, which makes me want to dig in more. We're going to get into that in a second. You wrote your first cookbook, Sheet Pan Dinners, and it was almost 10 years ago. Did you have a hint it would be a concept people would embrace so hugely? I mean, it took off. You basically, as if it's best, you were the first one introducing this whole concept to simplify your cooking, put it on a sheet pan. What was your inspiration?
I had no idea at the time that sheet pan suppers was going to become such a hit. It wasn't even my idea originally. It was my editor at Workman Publishing had this idea for a book and it needed an author, and we were connected. And kind of the more I thought about it and played around with the idea, the more genius it sort of became to me. It just makes so much sense. Sheet pans are kind of ubiquitous. I feel like most people have them in their kitchens, whether they were handed down from a family member or they sort of came with like a kitchen starter pack. Most people have a sheet pan. And you can really just like toss a bunch of stuff on there, maybe with a little bit of olive oil, some salt and pepper, throw it in the oven, and then you don't really have to think about it anymore. You let the oven do the work for you. And I just think roasting things in the oven gets such nice flavor. You get all those roasty, like toasty flavors.
Caramelized, yeah.
Yeah, caramelized edges, and it's just so simple. And so when your meal is in the oven, you can be doing other things, cleaning your kitchen, playing with your kids, prepping lunches for the next day. It frees you up a lot of time, which I think a lot of people need these days.
Let's talk a bit about your blog, Dunk and Crumble. Was that prior to the first cookbook?
Yeah, so I started that when I was living in Boston and working at my corporate job as my creative outlet. And it was sort of like just a way for for me to document my recipes. And so I could go back and read about them. And I've always loved to write. So it was just a way for me to write and get my stuff sort of just out in the world. But I sort of have been blogging. I think I started it in 2009, so it's been a long time. Lately, I have done less blogging. The more kids I've had, the less time I've had to update the blog, but I'm hoping to continue doing so in the future.
Well, I noticed that you did a podcast for a period of time. I take it you just got too busy, it became too much.
Yeah, exactly. We started it when my first son was little. He was just a baby. And my friend Sarah Bartholow and I started it. And now I have had 2 other kids and she has had 1. And so between the 2 of us, finding time to sit down and record podcasts has been a challenge. But it was really fun. It was called And Eat It Too. And we would basically take a food phrase like, to butter you up, or any sort of phrase that had a food item in it. And we would discuss the phrase, sort of talk about backstories of why that phrase came about, and then delve into the food part. So maybe we talk for like 40 minutes about butter and what we like about it and how you make it, and, certain recipes that kind of feature whatever food we're talking about. It's a really fun podcast.
It's a very clever idea, absolutely. And you're saying that, and I'm trying to think of a food saying, and you said butter, and that's it. That's in my brain.
On the website for the podcast, which you can still listen to.
Well, that's on your website, which is dunkandcrumble.com, folks. Now, for some reason, I'm not seeing in my comments these things coming up. They're flashing on the bottom of the screen. So I want to make sure that people have access to everything that you need to know about Molly is at Dunk, D-U-N-K, and A-N-D, crumble.com. And just a reminder, her latest cookbook is Sheet Pan Sweets. As we go on, we were talking earlier, the design of the book is just so clever. It's well done. There are sufficient pictures because people want pictures. They want to know what it's supposed to look like when it's finished. Mm-hmm. And I know there are cookbooks where they try to save, or they might do a composite. You're very generous with the color photographs, the design, the layout makes it easy to use. Your notes in the front of the book, equipment and things of that, very clear, very simplified. Your experience as a culinary teacher and recipe tester for Saveur. Were there key elements from those positions that gave you an insight on writing your recipes? What did other recipe writers, what were their common mistakes? What did you say, I've done all this, or they didn't measure, or what did you walk away with that and apply to your cookbooks?
Yeah, that's a great question. I learned a lot working for Saveur and in all my other jobs, but something that I took away from that job in particular was just how to be really smart and organized with my food shopping, number one, because that's one thing that I had to do while I was there. And like making a complete list, really going through, checking everything off. It sounds so easy, but just being smart and strategized in the way that you're shopping for your ingredients when you're testing a cookbook can save you a lot of time. And in terms of writing the recipes, I like to write recipes as simply as possible. I feel like I have seen plenty of recipes that just sort of dilly-dally or take their, go in roundabout ways that don't necessarily make sense or don't help the person trying to cook the recipe. So, obviously when I write my recipes, all the ingredients are listed in the order that you'll use them, for example. And they're all sort of broken down into, the directions are broken down into different steps that I've tried to make things as easy as possible for whoever's cooking. So if, you have to dirty a bowl with something, maybe we do the dry ingredients in that bowl first, so then you can reuse it in the next step for the wet ingredients, so you're not pulling out all the different types of equipment in your kitchen. I really wanted to try and pare things down and keep things simple, which isn't to say that there aren't some more complex recipes in here. There are, but I've really only included those when I think it's really worth it for the final result. So there are plenty of recipes that, use a mixer, stand mixer or handheld mixer, but there are also a ton where you just need a bowl and a whisk, basically. So that was my goal with this book, was to keep it simple and streamlined.
The challah recipe that I did, I have a K5 KitchenAid, and I look at it and it says, it doesn't seem like I need it. And I just put it in the bowl, hand mixed it, sat there, and it just worked so well. And I went, okay, I might have washed another bowl, I don't know, but it came together, followed the instructions, was perfect. So go there. More involved recipes might be your bûche Noël.
Sure. That one is one that looks quite involved, but when you get down to it is pretty simple, actually. So that is in the layered and rolled cakes section of the book. And let me just pull up a picture so people can see. It looks really pretty. So a bûche de Noël is sort of a classic cake for the holidays. It's rolled up. Oh, I can't find the picture anywhere. Where are you?
It's at the beginning.
Here we go. The bûche de Noël. So it looks really complicated and sort of intense, but all it is, it's a pretty simple sponge cake that has a little bit of hazelnut flour in it, and it's just baked in one layer on a sheet pan. And then, like all the other rolled cakes in this book, when it is done, you immediately turn it out onto your work surface and then sprinkle some powdered sugar on top and roll up the cake in like a dish towel or a sheet of parchment paper or something. And what that does is it gives the cake a muscle memory to be able to roll without cracking. And then the filling for that cake is super simple. I think it's just mascarpone cheese and Nutella.
Nutella, right.
So you get that really rich hazelnut flavor and chocolate. But the ingredient list is pretty simple. And once you get the hang of rolling the cake, putting it together is sort of a cinch as well.
I had a question down here about the rolled cakes and, why you would roll it immediately.
So
obviously, so it doesn't crack, but if there was some science behind that.
So I don't know the exact science, terms around it, but what you're doing is giving the cake that muscle memory while it's warm. So while the proteins are still like malleable, you can roll the cake up. The cake will sort of remember that it can roll that way once the filling is in it, and it won't crack.
And let's see, there was a Black Forest cake roll. There was a
I have a strawberry and cream roll. One of the
sticky toffee
pudding. And then one that's really good for the season right now is the pumpkin tiramisu roll. So it's a pumpkin cake. It's filled with like a coffee cream and dusted very generously with cocoa powder on top. So it's sort of, if you're like into the pumpkin spice latte sort of thing, that could be sort of the cake equivalent of that flavor.
They're just, I look at it, usually I get a cookbook and I find one or two recipes that I think I'm going to make. I am challenged here, and my neighbors will be getting fatter and fatter as I do these. I mean, I've just been, what did I do before this? I had company for dinner and I made the Chez Panisse almond cake.
Yum, that sounds delicious.
Well, I still had 3/4 of it left.
Well, that is one of the issues with this book. I mean, baking on a sheet pan makes a ton of dessert. So it's really good for around the holidays if you are having gatherings. Maybe you have like a school bake sale that you want to bake for, a birthday party. They're sort of meant to be shared and enjoyed with others.
Right. October has a lot of food holidays. It's Apple Month, Apple Day, Dessert Day, Chocolate Day, Donut Day, Gingerbread Day. But what I want to go to is talking about your sheet pan donuts.
Yes. So they're not actually individual donuts. I call it a dozen donut cake. So it's a sheet cake that has sort of that nutmeggy flavor of the inside of a donut. When it comes out of the oven, we brush melted butter all over the top, and then we sort of stripe different toppings. So maybe cinnamon sugar on one part, powdered sugar on another, a pink glaze with sprinkles on another part of the cake. And it's meant to look like you're opening a box of donuts, of a dozen different donuts. And it's a really fun one. It's in the breakfast and brunch chapter of the book, but you can see in the photo all the different fillings sort of striped on there. So you're not having to sit around and fry a bunch of donuts, but you still sort of get that donut-y flavor and large format to share different flavor donut cake with whoever you're sharing with.
Regular cake pans, when you bake a cake, tend to dome.
Mm-hmm.
In using the sheet pan, is it because it's so thin a layer that it doesn't, or it cooks more evenly, or does it tend to dome?
I have not found that it tends to dome in a sheet cake, and I think that is probably just because of the nature of the shape, and because baking on a sheet pan, there's so much surface area that the cakes do cook pretty quickly on there, and it doesn't really have a chance to dome. So, depending on if your oven is level, you may get like thicker on one side than the other. But doming shouldn't be an issue with these cake recipes.
Well, I think I cleared up. You've seen me looking at the side. I finally got a question here. Somebody saying, was writing your cookbooks easy as pie?
I love it. I think we talked about that on the podcast, actually, easy as pie. No, writing cookbooks is not easy as pie. It's really fun, and I really enjoy it, and I feel very lucky to be able to do it. But no, it's difficult between, just ideating and coming up with the ideas for the recipes, and then testing the recipes is probably the toughest part for me. It's the most time consuming. I have to test recipes over and over and over again until they really work and I feel good about it. And then the writing is probably my favorite part. Just getting to sit down and reflect on each recipe and write the head notes and sort of have fun with it.
Right.
But no, I wouldn't say it's easy as pie.
Okay. I've gotten carried away with our conversation. I almost forgot. Our sponsor, Pearlstone Center, has a short film for you, and then we will return with our interview with Molly Gilbert.
Pearlstone Conference and Retreat Center offers environmentally friendly, full-service, farm-to-table hospitality. Our beautiful facilities and natural surroundings make the optimal setting for memorable events and group gatherings. PearlstoneCenter.org.
Well, we're back. That was quick. I wanted to see, I'm coming down here with the questions. Are you a fan of the Great British Bake Off?
Yes, huge fan. I love it. I find it so relaxing to, like, at the end of the day, just stick on an episode and watch. It's best.
I sit here and the whole thing is Britain is getting it on Wednesday, and then I get notes, we have a new episode, but we don't get it. We got to wait till Friday.
I know.
So we have the new season. Is there a fourth cookbook in discussion at this point?
There's not yet. I'm sort of taking it one day at a time here. My youngest is just 3 months, so I'm sort of coming out of the fog of new motherhood with her and haven't really had a chance to look that far into the future, but hopefully we'll see.
So we're just right now, because the book officially hits the shelves October 4th. I was lucky enough to get an advance copy. So you're going to be out there promoting the book. You live in Seattle, so do you have anything for anybody who's watching from Seattle? Don't you have an appearance or something coming up?
I do, on Monday, so that would be October 3rd, at Book Larder in Fremont in Seattle. It's this amazing cookbook bookstore. I'm going to be doing a signing at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, October 3rd. So if you're in Seattle, please come by and say hello, and I'll sign your book, and we'll have a good time.
Question for you. Why sometimes recipes call for a room temperature egg and other recipes don't?
So room temperature eggs often help with baking because they will incorporate better into the other ingredients. Like if you're mixing two things that are different temperatures, sometimes they just you'll notice like maybe your batter will start to curdle, or it just won't come together as smoothly as you want it to. So that's why people like using room temperature eggs. If you don't have eggs at room temperature, what you can do is sit them in a bowl of water for a few minutes, and that'll sort of help bring them up to temperature. Or you can just, in a lot of the recipes in this book, you can just use them from the refrigerator, unless I really specify you need room temperature eggs for this. I sort of want to make the barriers to baking as easy as possible for people. So go ahead and use those cold from the fridge eggs.
Okay, just different than my own personal questions. As we talked about, I'm a frustrated baker. Go to the recipe, line 5, and I'm all set to go. Room temperature eggs.
Yeah.
Okay. Or room temperature butter.
Yeah.
I always say, I try to advise people, though I don't follow my own advice, read the recipe 3 times before you start doing it, and then you won't miss anything. So we're down to my final questions that I love to ask. Oh, no, wait a second. Jen, the producer, has a question or two.
Okay.
What is the sheet pan recipe you make most regularly for your family?
The sheet pan supper that I make most regularly for my family is probably it's like a roasted sausage, onions, and peppers. It's just like the easiest. I always have pre-cooked sausage in my freezer, and I can just chop it up from frozen and throw it on the sheet pan with some sliced onions, some peppers, olive oil, salt, and pepper. And that is the one that I make sort of when I don't know what else to make.
Do you serve it over noodles, rice, or on a roll?
We do a lot of rice in our house, but depending on the day, I've done it with noodles. I've even done it with just like a green salad on the side if I'm being extra lazy.
Okay, well, we'll let you be extra lazy with what, 3 kids? You're entitled. Jen, another question. What is your favorite way to clean a sheet pan? We all know those little corners, those little nooks and crannies, as best as we oil them.
Yeah. I would advise people not to look too closely at my sheet pans. It is, I stick them under the faucet. I use soap with, dish soap with I get a sponge. I have a Scrub Daddy sponge, which I really like in there. And I am very happy that my kitchen sink has a attachment, one of those like faucet things that you can pull down and move around, which is very helpful in cleaning a sheet pan instead of having to move the pan under the faucet. But yeah, I find having a little patina on your pan is okay.
Okay. And just to remind people, dunkandcrumble.com for Molly Gilbert, the new book, Sheet Pan Sweets. And if you haven't gotten Sheet Pan Suppers, you can get a good combo at Amazon.com. My final 4 questions. Best bite of the week.
So I bought a big flat of peaches probably 2 weeks ago when peaches were sort of on their way out. And I made a big thing of like stewed peaches. And I've been eating that in the morning with my yogurt every morning. And it's just really brightened my days. It's delicious. Savoring that summer flavor.
What piece of advice would you go back and give your 18-year-old self?
Aside from like buying some Bitcoin or something, I would probably just tell myself to like chill out. It's going to be okay. Trust your gut. It's not wrong.
Okay. If you could wake up tomorrow with a new talent, what would it be?
If I could wake up tomorrow with a new talent, it would be being able to like speak any language.
Okay. I've had a couple of people say that. Also singing. People would like to be able to sing.
I like singing.
Yeah. Your ultimate culinary fail.
My ultimate culinary fail is probably, I always think about this story. I was coming for Christmas with my husband's family for the first time, and we weren't married yet. It was like they're all very new. And I was like, okay, this is great. I'm going to shine here. I'm going to bake them a pumpkin pie. And I went through, like I did the grocery run. I did the whole thing. I pulled the pie out of the oven. I'm so proud. And then we sit down to eat it. And everyone's sort of just like, nobody's saying anything, but I take a bite and I realize that I've forgotten the sugar in the recipe. So we're basically eating like a weird savory squash pie. And I was like, just mortified.
Okay, now that you're more human to everybody has their failures and we all learn from them. The final question is, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
What didn't you ask me that you should have? Where you
Should
can buy
have.
the book, maybe? Where you can buy the book? You can pre-order it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anywhere books are sold. You should be able to find it.
Absolutely. And for those of you who might be like me, a little hesitant about baking, it's really a great book. I love it. I think it has everything a cookbook should have: good pictures, good instructions,
Thank you.
good
And it's
stories.
nice. Like, it's paperback. It's not too big and heavy. It's not like a big thing that's going to sit on your counter and just not get used. So
No, but I want to say, you're saying it is paperback, but it's a heavier duty cover. It really,
yeah.
and it's shaped like a sheet pan. Cleverly done.
Yeah,
All right, we got everything covered.
I think so.
Molly, I wish you only the best. I appreciate you being on the show. I will send you pictures of other things that I baked. It'll be up on Instagram. And thank you for taking the time to visit with us, and a big mwah.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Okay, everyone. Next week's show, my guests will be Chefs Kat Smith and Kia Gabian, founders of Our Time Kitchen. As they say, a kitchen built for us, by us, that will work to eliminate these barriers and allow more businesses to hold more profit, and as a result, create the opportunity to grow and flourish. It's an amazing story how these two women bought this terrible looking building. They've refurbished it. They've made it available to anyone at a very cost effective price that needs a kitchen. They even have childcare in there, and it is cooking classes. It's an amazing story. Although it is much more, as I said, than what I've just said, their story's great. So tune in next week to meet Kat and Kia. And Kat has been written up on Gourmet Magazine. Not Gourmet, Bon Appetit. Gourmet's been gone a long time. Forgive me for that. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at food@jmoreliving.com, or Instagram is @DaraCooks. Watch my posts, my reels. All shows are immediately archived in video form on J Moore's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. Feel free to dig into the past shows, listen when you're taking a walk, a run, or even driving in the car. As I say, you don't have to look at this face. Just listen. The guests have been great. Go back into the archives. We truly appreciate it when you share our shows with friends and family. Be kind to people. Smile. Say hello. It brightens your day. It brightens their day. And we need a little bit of that in this world. As always, may your plates always, always remain full.